Commander Valterra stood on the observation deck of the Zilani command station, watching her world die. Below them, Kisira Prime glowed with an unnatural light as massive crystal formations spread across the surface like a disease. The Devourer had arrived 3 days ago, and already entire continents were being consumed. The ancient creature was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its crystalline body sparkled with colors that had no names, and energy flowed through it like liquid starlight. But Valterra knew what lay beneath that beauty. The Devourer was older than most civilizations, and it had been feeding on worlds for millions of years. "Commander, the southern continent is completely consumed," reported her aide, a young Zilani named Kevlin. His voice shook as he spoke. "The creature has reached the planetary core access points. We have maybe 30 rotations before it begins feeding on the core itself." Valterra nodded slowly. Once the Devourer reached the planetary core, Kisira Prime would be finished. The creature would drain all the energy from their world, leaving nothing behind but a cold, dead rock floating in space. "How many ships do we have ready for evacuation?" she asked. 43 vessels, Commander, but they can only carry about 50,000 people each. We have 2.8 billion citizens on the surface. The numbers were impossible. Even if every ship in their fleet worked perfectly, they could only save a tiny fraction of their population. And that assumed they had somewhere to take the refugees, which they did not. Valterra had seen the reports from other worlds that had faced the Devourer. 17 planets had been consumed in the past century, and not one had been saved. The creature was simply too powerful, too ancient, and too alien for any known weapons to stop it. "Send out the emergency broadcast," she ordered. "All frequencies, all known communication channels. Send it to every civilization in the galaxy." Kevlin looked surprised. "Commander, you know what the other species will say?" "They always say the same thing." "I know," Valterra replied. "But we have to try." The message was simple and direct. 8. Contained the basic facts about their situation. The number of people who needed evacuation, and the time limit they were working with. Valterra recorded the message herself, trying to keep the desperation out of her voice. "This is Commander Valterra of the Zilani Defense Fleet. Our world, Kisira Prime, is being consumed by the entity known as the Devourer. We have 2.8 billion citizens who need immediate evacuation. We have 30 rotations before our planet becomes uninhabitable. We request emergency assistance from any species capable of providing transport or refugee support." The responses began arriving within hours, and they were exactly what Valterra had expected. The Altarian Empire sent their regrets but explained that their ships were too small for such a massive evacuation. The Centauri Federation offered to take 50,000 refugees, but only if the Zilani could transport them to Centauri space themselves. The Galactic Council sent a formal response expressing sympathy for the Zilani situation, but noting that the Devourer had never been successfully stopped or even slowed down. They recommended that the Zilani focus on preserving their cultural records in important genetic samples rather than attempting a full evacuation. Every major civilization in the galaxy responded with some version of the same message. They were sorry, but what the Zilani were asking for was impossible. The logistics alone were beyond anything that had ever been attempted. Moving nearly 3 billion people in 30 days would require thousands of ships and perfect coordination between dozens of species. And even if such an evacuation were possible, where would they put 2.8 billion refugees? Most worlds were already at capacity with their own populations. The few planets that had room were either too dangerous for the peaceful Zilani or controlled by species that did not welcome outsiders. As the responses poured in, Valterra felt the weight of command pressing down on her. She was responsible for her entire species, and she was failing them. The Devourer continued its slow consumption of their world, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Commander Kevlin said softly, "Perhaps we should focus on saving who we can. 43 ships could carry our best scientists, our cultural leaders, our genetic archives." Valterra understood what he was suggesting. Save the few to preserve the species, and let the billions die. It was logical, practical, and completely unacceptable to her. "No," she said firmly. "We find another way, or we all stay together." On The fourth day after sending the broadcast, something unexpected happened. A new response arrived, but this one was different from all the others. It came from a species that was not in any of their databases. From a world that their computers flagged as uninhabitable. The message was short and casual in a way. It seemed almost disrespectful given the situation. But there was something about it that made Valterra read it 3 times. Received your distress call. Help is on the way. ETA 6 days. Hang tight. The message was signed by someone called Captain Jake Morrison of something called the UES Defiant, representing a species that called themselves humans. Valterra immediately ran a search for any information about humans or their homeworld. She found made no sense, according to Galactic classification systems. Humans came from a Class 12 death world called Earth. Class 12 was the highest danger rating in the system. It meant a world so hostile that complex life should not be able to evolve there, let alone develop civilization. The computer analysis of Earth was disturbing. The planet had dangerous levels of radiation, an atmosphere that was 21% oxygen, which was high enough to be toxic to most species, Katie, and gravity that was nearly twice galactic standard. The surface was covered with predatory life. Forms, natural disasters occurred regularly, and the weather patterns were chaotic and unpredictable. According to the data, nothing civilized should be able to survive on such a world. Yet somehow, these humans had not only survived but developed space travel, and were claiming they could help with the Devourer. Commander Kevlin said, looking at the same data, "This has to be some kind of mistake. No species could evolve. Intelligence on a world like that? And even if they did, how could they possibly help us? The Devourer has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than anything that could come from a death world." Valterra stared at the message again. There was something about its confidence that intrigued her. Every other species in the galaxy had immediately declared their situation impossible. But these humans seemed to think helping them would be routine. "Send a response," she ordered. "Ask them what kind of assistance they can provide." The reply came back within an hour, and it was even more puzzling than the first message. "We can provide full evacuation support if needed, but we're thinking more along the lines of problem elimination." Why move the people when you can remove the threat? "We've dealt with planet eaters before. This one looks pretty standard. See ya. You in 6 days." Valterra read the message several times, trying to understand what the humans meant by problem elimination and planet eaters. The Devourer was not just any threat. It was an ancient cosmic force that had been consuming worlds. Since before most civilizations had developed writing, the idea that some unknown species from a death world had dealt with similar creatures before seemed impossible. But as she watched another section of her world disappear beneath the growing crystal formations, Valterra realized that impossible was all she had left to hope for. "Prepare the welcome protocols," she told Kevlin, "and alert all defense stations. In 6 days, we're either going to meet our salvation or something even more dangerous than the Devourer." As the Zilani prepared for the arrival of the humans, the Devourer continued its slow, steady consumption of Kisira Prime. Time was running out, and their only hope was coming from a world that should not have been able to produce any hope at all. The human fleet arrived exactly when they said they would. Commander Valterra watched from the command bridge as strange ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of their solar system. She had expected vessels similar to other galactic civilizations, sleek, smooth designs that looked like works of art floating through space. What she saw instead made her question whether these humans were actually a spacefaring species at all. The human ships looked like they had been built in someone's backyard using spare parts. They were covered in armor plating that did not match, with weapons bolted onto the outside in places that made no engineering sense. Some of the larger vessels appeared to have entire sections that were different colors, as if they had been repaired using pieces from other ships. Commander Kevlin said, his voice filled with disbelief, "Are we sure these are actually functional spacecraft? They look like they might fall apart if someone sneezes too hard." Before Valterra could respond, a communication request came through. On standard galactic frequencies. The voice that answered was casual and relaxed. with none of the formal protocol that galactic civilizations use for first contact situations. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant. We're here about your Devourer problem. Permission to come aboard and take a look at what we're dealing with." Valterra exchanged glances with her staff. The human had not even introduced his species properly or followed any of the established diplomatic procedures. He was talking about the situation like he was a repair technician coming to fix a broken water system. "Captain Morrison," she replied carefully, "we welcome your assistance. However, I must inform you that the situation is extremely dangerous. The Devourer has already consumed 40% of our planet, and our best scientists estimate we have less than 26 rotations before complete planetary destruction." There was a pause, and then Captain Morrison's voice came back with what sounded almost like amusement. 26 days? That's plenty of time. We once had to deal with a similar situation in about 6 hours. Don't worry about it. We'll have this sorted out by the weekend. Casual confidence in the humans. The voice was unlike anything Valterra had ever heard when discussing the Devourer. Every other species treated the ancient creature with the respect and fear that such a cosmic force deserved. This human was talking about it like it was a minor inconvenience. "A transport aboard," she said finally. "We will provide you with all available data on the creature." The human transport ship that docked with their station was somehow even more concerning than their warships. It looked like a metal box with engines attached, and Valterra could see what appeared to be repair patches covering holes in the hull. When the airlock opened, she expected to see humans in environmental suits, since their database indicated that Earth had a toxic atmosphere instead. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the airlock wearing what looked like a simple blue uniform and breathing their air without any protection at all. He was taller than most Solani, with brown hair and eyes that seemed to find everything around him mildly interesting, rather than impressive. Behind him came a small group of other humans. There was a woman with long black hair who introduced herself as Dr. Lisa Chen, a large man with dark skin called Chief Engineer Paul Davis, and a red-haired woman named Communications Officer Amy Foster. None of them seemed particularly concerned about being on an alien space station or facing a cosmic threat. "Nice place you have here," Captain Morrison said, looking around the command center. "Very clean. Our ships tend to be a bit more lived in." Valterra struggled to understand the human attitude. They were facing a creature that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, and this human was making small talk about interior decorating. "Captain Morrison," she said, "perhaps we should begin by showing you the data we have collected on the Devourer." "Sure thing. But first, can we get a visual on this thing? I like to see what I'm dealing with." Kevlin activated the main viewing screen, which showed the planet below them. The Devourer had grown significantly since the humans arrived. Crystal formations now covered more than half the surface, and energy patterns flowed through them like glowing rivers. Dr. Chen stepped forward and studied the image with professional interest. "Interesting," she said. "It's basically a space virus with delusions of grandeur. The crystal structure is how it converts matter into energy, and those flowing patterns are its digestive system." Valterra stared at the human scientist. "Hey, Dr. Chen, this creature has destroyed 17 worlds. It is one of the most powerful entities known to exist in our galaxy." "Oh, I'm sure it's very impressive," Dr. Chen replied. "But when you get down to the basic biology, it's just a really big parasite. It finds a planet, attaches to it, and starts eating. We've seen similar things on Earth, just smaller." The casual way the human dismissed a force that had brought her entire civilization to the brink of extinction was almost offensive. Valterra began to wonder if these humans truly understood what they were facing. Chief Engineer Davis was looking at technical displays showing the Devourer's energy output and structural composition. "You know," he said to Captain Morrison, "this thing is impressive, but it's poorly designed. Look at these energy flows. It's incredibly inefficient. Most of the power it generates gets wasted as heat and light." "What are you suggesting?" Captain Morrison asked. "Well, if we could introduce some kind of feedback loop into its system, we might be able to give it what I like to call cosmic indigestion. Make it sick enough that it has to stop eating and focus on not dying." Valterra felt her hopes sinking. These humans were talking about the Devourer like it was a machine that could be repaired or a sick animal that could be treated with medicine.
Oh.
They clearly did not understand that they were dealing with a cosmic force beyond the comprehension of most species. "Captain Morrison," she said carefully, "I appreciate your confidence, but I think you may not fully understand the nature of this threat. The Devourer is not a normal life form. It operates on principles that our science cannot fully explain. It has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than either of our species." Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your concern, Commander. But the thing is, we humans have a different way of looking at problems. When other species see something impossible, we see a challenge. When they see certain death, we see an interesting Tuesday." Communication Officer Foster had been working with some of the Zilani technical staff, and she approached with a datapad. "Captain, I've been talking with these folks about their planetary communication network. If we need to coordinate something planet-wide, they have the infrastructure to do it." "Good thinking, Amy. We might need that for the cure delivery system." Belterra looked between the humans with growing confusion. "Cure delivery system?" "Oh, right," Captain Morrison said. "We're not planning to evacuate anyone. We're going to kill the Devourer." The command center fell silent. Every Zilani present stared at the human captain as if he had just announced his intention to fly into their sun. "Captain Morrison," Belterra said slowly, "no one has ever killed a Devourer. It has never even been injured. Creatures immune to all known weapons and energy attacks." "Well, sure," Morrison replied. "But you've been using known weapons. We tend to be more creative." Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the Devourer's internal structure. "The key is understanding that it's still a biological entity, even if it's a weird one. It has to follow certain rules of biology. It needs to maintain homeostasis. It has metabolic processes, and it can be poisoned if you know what you're doing." "Want to poison the Devourer?" Kevlin asked. "Among other things," Chief Engineer Davis said. "We're thinking a multi-pronged approach. Biological warfare, structural disruption, and good old-fashioned explosives." The word explosives caused several Zilani to take a step backward. Most galactic civilizations had moved beyond explosive weapons centuries ago, considering them crude and dangerous. "You still use explosives?" Belterra asked. "Oh, we love explosives," Morrison said cheerfully. "Very reliable, very effective. And they send a clear message. Plus, we've got some really big ones." Amy Foster was showing some of the younger Zilani staff pictures of Earth on her personal device. "This is where we come from," she was saying. "And this is a picture of my hometown after a hurricane came through last year." The images showed destruction on a scale that would have been considered a planetary disaster by Zilani standards. The human was talking about it like it was a minor weather event. "How do you survive on such a dangerous world?" one of the Zilani asked. "You adapt," Foster replied simply. "When everything around you is trying to kill you, you get really good at not dying." As Belterra watched the humans interact with her people, she began to understand something important. These beings had not come from a world that happened to be dangerous. It evolved to thrive in danger, to see threats as problems to be solved rather than disasters to be endured. "Captain Morrison," she said, "how can you be so confident about facing the Devourer?" Marine Sergeant Danny Rodriguez checked his equipment one final time as the transport ship approached the Devourer's surface. Around him, 5 other human Marines were making similar preparations, their movements calm and routine despite the fact that they were about to land on what every other species in the galaxy considered instant death. "Remember, people," he said into his helmet communicator, "this is just a recon mission. You go down, take some samples, get a feel for the local environment, and come back home in time for dinner." Through the transport's viewing window, Rodriguez could see the crystalline surface of the Devourer growing larger. Energy patterns flowed through the crystal like liquid lightning, and the whole structure pulsed with a rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. "It would have been beautiful if it had not been busy eating a planet, Sergeant Rodriguez," came Captain Morrison's voice over the radio. "You are clear for landing. Try not to let it eat you." "Copy that, Captain. We'll do our best not to get digested." On the Zilani command station, Commander Belterra watched the human landing operation with a mixture of horror and fascination. The humans were descending directly onto the Devourer's feeding surface, where energy levels were high enough to cook most organic matter in seconds. Commander Kevlin said, his voice tight with stress, "The energy readings from that area are off our measurement scales. Nothing should be able to survive down there." Dr. Lisa Chen, who had remained on the station to monitor the mission, looked up from her instruments with mild interest. "Oh, the radiation levels are pretty high," she agreed. "Nothing the suits can't handle. We've been in worse places." "Worse places?" Velterra asked. "Well, Danny once had to spend 3 days in an active volcano on Europa to collect samples. And last year, the whole unit did a training exercise inside a solar storm. This is actually pretty comfortable by comparison." The casual way the human scientists discussed surviving in conditions that would be considered mythologically dangerous made Velterra question everything she thought she knew about the limits of biological life. On the surface, Rodriguez and his team had successfully landed and were beginning their survey. The crystalline ground beneath their feet vibrated with power, and the air around them shimmered with energy discharges that would have been lethal to most known species. "Surface temperature is holding steady at about 400 degrees, reported Corporal Kelly Brooks, the team's technical specialist. "Radiation levels are pretty spicy, but nothing we haven't dealt with before." Rodriguez knelt down and used a specialized tool to chip off a sample of the crystal formation. The moment his tool touched the surface, energy arced up through it, but his suit's systems absorbed the discharge without any problems. "Interesting," he said. "This stuff is definitely alive. I can feel it reacting to our presence." Private First Class Tony Miller was using a scanner to map the energy flows beneath their feet. "Sarge, I'm getting some weird readings. This whole structure is one giant nervous system. Every time we move, information travels through the crystal network." "So it knows we're here." "Oh yeah, it definitely knows we're here, but it doesn't seem to consider us a threat." Rodriguez stood up and looked around at the alien landscape. Crystal formations stretched to the horizon in every direction, pulsing with colors that did not exist in any natural spectrum he knew. Energy streams flowed between the formations like rivers of pure power. "Makes sense," he said. "From its perspective, we're probably like tiny bacteria walking around on its skin. Nothing worth getting worried about." Back on the command station, the Zilani technical staff were monitoring the humans' vital signs with growing amazement. Not only were the Marines still alive, but their heart rates and stress indicators were actually lower than normal. "I don't understand," said one of the Zilani scientists. "They're walking around in conditions that should kill them instantly, and they're more relaxed than they were during the briefing." Amy Foster looked up from her communication station. "Danny and his team are used to working in hostile environments. This is actually pretty calm for them. No one's shooting at them, nothing's trying to eat them, and the weather is nice and stable. Consider 400 degrees and lethal radiation to be nice weather." "Well, it's not raining," Foster said with a smile. Chief Engineer Paul Davis was analyzing the data that Rodriguez's team was sending back. "This is fascinating," he said to Captain Morrison. "The Devourer's energy distribution system is even more inefficient than I thought. It's wasting enormous amounts of power through heat and electromagnetic radiation." "Is that good or bad for us?" Morrison asked. "It's good. Very good. It means the creature is operating right at the edge of its energy balance. If we can introduce even a small disruption to its metabolism, the whole system could collapse." Chen was examining the crystal samples that the Marine team had collected. "The biological component is definitely vulnerable to the right kind of chemical attack," she said. "I'm seeing cellular structures that look similar to Earth-based organisms. Different but similar enough that some of our biological weapons should be effective." On the surface, Rodriguez's team had moved deeper into the Devourer's feeding area. They were now walking through what could only be described as the creature's digestive system. Around them, massive crystal formations were actively breaking down chunks of the planet and converting them into energy. "This is definitely the weirdest place I've ever been," said Private Miller. "And I once spent a week inside a black hole research station." "You spent a week inside a black hole?" Corporal Brooks asked. "Research station near a black hole," Miller clarified. "Honestly, the time dilation effects were almost as weird as this place."
Dr. Regas
was taking detailed scans of the conversion process. Command, are you seeing this data? The way this thing processes matter is incredibly complex, but it's also got some serious weak points. You're seeing it, Danny. Captain Morrison's voice came back. What's your assessment? It's like a giant factory, but one that was designed by someone who failed engineering school. There are inefficiencies everywhere, and the control systems are way too centralized. Dr. Chen's voice joined the conversation. Danny, can you get closer to one of those energy flow junctions? I need better readings on the control mechanisms. Rodriguez looked at the nearest junction, which was a massive crystal formation that pulsed with enough energy to power a small city. You want me to walk up and touch the thing that's pumping enough power to vaporize a mountain? Just get close. You don't have to actually touch it. Fine, but if I get turned into plasma, I'm blaming you. As Rodriguez approached the energy junction, the power readings on his equipment went crazy. The crystal formation was beautiful up close, with internal structures that looked like frozen lightning. But more importantly, he could see the control mechanisms that Dr. Chen needed. He said, recording everything his instruments could. Detect. This thing has built-in safety systems to prevent power overloads, but they're not very sophisticated. Perfect, Dr. Chen said. That's exactly what I needed to know. On the command station, Commander Valterra watched the humans work. With a growing sense of disbelief, they had sent 6 people down to the surface of a creature that had destroyed 17 worlds. And those 6 people were conducting what appeared to be a routine scientific survey. How are they doing this? She asked Dr. Chen. Practice, the human scientist replied. When you grow up on a world where everything is trying to kill you, you get really good at not dying. Danny's team has been in situations like this dozens of times. What kind of situations could possibly be like this? Well, there was the time they had to set up a research station inside an active supervolcano, or the mission where they spent 2 weeks on the surface of a planet where it rained sulfuric acid, or that fun assignment where they had to collect samples from inside a living space whale. Each example sounded more impossible than the last. Valterra began to understand that humans did not see dangerous environments as obstacles to be avoided. They saw them as problems to be solved. Chief Engineer Davis had been working on his calculations while the Marines collected data. Captain, he said, I think I know how to kill this thing.
I'm listening.
The Devourer's entire system depends on maintaining a very specific energy balance. If we can introduce a cascading feedback loop into its control systems, we can make it consume more energy than it produces, like making it eat itself. Exactly. But we need to deliver the disruption mechanism directly into its core control systems. That means someone has to go deeper than where Danny's team is now. Rodriguez's voice came over the communicator. Did someone say something about going deeper? Yeah, because I'm looking at what appears to be an entrance to the creature's internal systems, Danny. Do not go in there without backup, Captain Morrison said firmly. Copy that. But just so you know, it doesn't look that dangerous. I mean, it's glowing with deadly energy, and probably filled with hostile alien biology. But other than that, it looks pretty manageable. Amy Foster was coordinating with the Zilani communication systems to prepare for the next phase of the operation. Commander Valterra, she said, we're going to need to use your planetary communication network to coordinate a planet-wide delivery system. The attack began at dawn on Kisira Prime, though the planet's surface was so covered in glowing crystal that it was hard to tell day from night anymore. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Bradley stood in the transport bay of the UES Defiant, watching. Her assault teams make final preparations for what every other species in the galaxy would have called a suicide mission. All right, people, she announced to the assembled Marines. Today we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to walk into the digestive system of a cosmic horror and give it the worst case of food poisoning in galactic history. The Marines cheered. Sarah had learned long ago that humans perform better when they were excited about impossible tasks rather than worried about them. Remember, she continued, Dr. Chun's biological weapon needs to be delivered to at least 12 different points in the creature's core systems. Engineer Davis has given us the exact locations. We go in, plant the charges, get out, and then watch the fireworks from a safe distance. On the command station, Commander Valterra watched the human preparations with a mixture of admiration and terror. The humans were about to attempt something that went against every principle of military strategy she had ever learned. Instead of attacking from a distance with overwhelming firepower, they were planning to go inside their enemy and attack it from within. "Captain Morrison," she said, "are you certain this plan will work? The risks seem enormous." Morrison looked up from the tactical display he was studying with Dr. Chen and Chief Engineer Davis. "Commander, I won't lie to you. This is definitely dangerous. But the thing about humans is that we've been doing dangerous things for so long that we've gotten pretty good at it." Dr. Chen was making final adjustments to her biological weapon, which looked disappointingly ordinary for something designed to kill a cosmic entity. It appeared to be nothing more than a collection of small metal containers filled with what looked like ordinary water. The beauty of this approach, she explained to the fascinated Zilani scientists, is that we're not fighting the Devourer's strengths. We're exploiting its weaknesses. This organism is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly specialized. It's never had to deal with the kind of biological warfare that evolved on Earth. Chief Engineer Davis was coordinating with Amy Foster to synchronize their attack with the planet's communication network. Now, the feedback disruptor needs to activate at exactly the same time as the biological agent, he explained. If the timing is off by more than a few seconds, the Devourer's immune system might adapt before the poison can take effect. Down on the surface, Sarah Bradley's assault teams were moving through the crystal landscape toward their target points. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, their heavy armor allowing them to ignore environmental hazards that would have stopped any other species. "Team Alpha is in position," reported Sergeant Rodriguez over the communication system. "At the first injection point, this place looks like the inside of a really angry computer." "Team Beta in position," came another voice. "The energy flows down here are incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Sarah was leading Team Gamma toward the deepest target point, located in what Dr. Chen believed was the Devourer's primary control center. The journey required them to travel through passages that pulsed with living crystal and crawl through spaces where reality itself seemed to bend around the creature's energy fields. "You know," said Corporal Janet Stone, who was following close behind Sarah, "this reminds me of that time we had to clear out the abandoned research station on Titan, except that place was only trying to drive us insane, not digest us." "At least the Devourer is honest about wanting to eat us," replied Private First Class Marcus Webb. "I respect that in an enemy." The casual conversation helped keep the team relaxed as they navigated through increasingly bizarre terrain. Deeper they went into the creature, the more alien everything became. Walls flowed like liquid while somehow remaining solid, and the air itself seemed to whisper with voices in languages that had never been spoken. On the command station, Zilani technical staff were monitoring the humans' progress with instruments that were being pushed beyond their design limits. The energy readings from the Devourer's interior were so intense that normal sensors simply could not function. "How are they surviving in there?" asked one of the Zilani engineers. "Our instruments can barely detect them through all that interference." Amy Foster was calmly managing communication with all the assault teams, while simultaneously coordinating with the planetary network. "The suits have really good shielding," she said. "Plus, humans are surprisingly hard to kill once you get them motivated." In space above the planet, Commander Alex Turner was positioning his ship, the UES Relentless, for what he cheerfully called aggressive orbital insertion. His mission was to disable the Devourer's sensor clusters, which were located on the creature's upper surface and protected by energy barriers that could vaporize normal spacecraft. "Turner to Morrison," he broadcast. "I'm beginning my attack run. If this doesn't work, tell my wife I died doing something incredibly stupid and she was right to worry about me." "Copy that, Alex. Try not to get yourself killed before the real fun starts." Turner's ship accelerated toward the Devourer's surface at a speed that would have been considered reckless by any reasonable military standard. The creature's defensive systems activated immediately, sending streams of energy that could have destroyed a city toward the incoming human vessel. But Turner had not survived 3 years of piloting ships through the asteroid fields of the Sol system by being reasonable. He flew his ship through the energy streams with precision that bordered on the impossible. Using the ship's momentum and the Devourer's own defensive fire to slingshot toward his target, relentless to assault teams, he announced as his ship screamed toward the crystal surface. I'm about to give this thing something to think about besides eating your planet. The impact was spectacular. Turner's ship, traveling at a significant percentage of light speed, struck the Devourer's sensor cluster with enough force to be visible from the command station. The explosion lit up half the planet and sent shockwaves through the crystal structure that the assault teams could feel even deep in the creature's interior. "Turner report," Captain Morrison called. "I'm alive. My ship is not," came the reply. "But the good news is that I took out about 60% of the sensor cluster, and my crew is safely away in escape pods. The bad news is that I think I made it angry." The Devourer's response was immediate and terrifying. The entire crystal structure began to pulse with increased energy, and new defensive systems activated throughout its body. The creature had clearly decided that these small biological entities were more than just a minor annoyance deep inside the Devourer. Sarah's team had reached their target point. The control center was a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures. That looked like the nervous system of some impossible machine. Energy flowed between the structures in patterns so complex that looking at them too long made the humans feel dizzy. "This is definitely the place," Sarah announced. "I can see control. Pathways leading in every direction. If Dr. Chen's biological weapon is going to work, this is where we need to plant it." "Contact in the chamber," reported Private Webb. "We've got some kind of defense system activating." The Devourer's immune response took the form of crystal formations that grew rapidly from the walls and floor, attempting to surround and absorb the human intruders. But the Marines had dealt with hostile environments before, and they adapted quickly to the new threat. "Standard defensive formation," Sarah ordered. "Remember, we're not here to fight this thing. We're here to give it medicine." The team moved through the growing crystal maze with practiced efficiency, using explosives to clear pathways and specialized equipment to avoid the creature's attempts to absorb them. Within minutes, they had reached the optimal position for deploying Dr. Chen's biological weapon. "Package delivered," Sarah reported. "Beginning extraction." Similar reports came in from the other assault teams as they completed their missions throughout the Devourer's body. Each team had successfully delivered their portion of the biological weapon, despite increasingly aggressive immune responses from the creature. "All teams report successful delivery," Amy Foster announced from the command station. "Dr. Chen, you're clear to activate the weapon." Dr. Chen looked at her control panel, which showed all 12 injection points were ready. "Activating biological agent in 3, 2, 1, mark." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Devourer continued its steady consumption of the planet, and the crystal formations continued to pulse with their normal rhythm. Then Chief Engineer Davis activated his feedback disruptor. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The energy flows throughout the Devourer's body became chaotic and unpredictable. Systems that had operated flawlessly for millions of years suddenly began to malfunction. The creature's steady consumption of the planet stuttered and stopped as its entire metabolism was thrown into chaos. "It's working," Dr. Chen announced with satisfaction. "The biological agent is interfering with the creature's cellular processes, and the feedback disruptor is preventing it from adapting to the attack." The Devourer died at exactly 14 hours and 37 minutes after the humans began their attack. Watched from the command station as the massive crystalline structure that had been consuming her world collapsed in on itself in a spectacular display of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. The creature's death was not quiet. As its biological systems failed, the energy it had been storing was released all at once. Waves of multicolored light rippled across the planet's surface, and the crystal formations that had covered nearly 60% of Kisira Prime began to crumble and dissolve. "Energy cascade is stabilizing," reported Chief Engineer Paul Davis, who was monitoring the process with obvious satisfaction. "The feedback loop worked exactly as predicted. The creature basically ate itself to death." Dr. Lisa Chen was studying the biological readings from the planet's surface. "The cellular breakdown is complete," she announced. All traces of the Devourer's biological components are dissolving into harmless organic compounds. In a few hours, they'll be indistinguishable from ordinary soil. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the main viewing screen, watching the light show with the calm expression he had worn throughout the entire crisis. "Not bad for a weekend project," he said. "Sarah, how are your people doing?" Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Bradley's voice came over the communication system. "All teams are back on the ships and accounted for, Captain. A few minor injuries, mostly from people walking into walls while they were staring at all the pretty lights, but nothing serious. Outstanding. Paul, what's the status on planetary recovery?" "The good news is that the Devourer only managed to consume about 40% of the planetary mass before we stopped it," Davis replied. "The bad news is that 40% of a planet is still a lot of missing rock and soil." Amy Foster looked up from her communication station. "The Solani are asking if we can help with the reconstruction efforts." Morrison nodded. "Of course we broke it. We helped fix it. That's the human way." For the Zolani leadership, the aftermath of the Devourer's death was almost as shocking as the fact that it had been killed in the first place. Captain Jennifer Martinez, who commanded the Human Engineering Corps, had arrived with a fleet of construction ships and was already making plans to rebuild the damaged sections of their world. "We can replace the missing continental masses with synthesized materials," she explained to Commander Valterra during a planning meeting. "It won't be exactly the same as what you had before, but it'll be structurally sound and fully habitable." "Can rebuild entire continents?" Valterra asked. "Sure, we've done it before. Earth gets hit by planet-killing asteroids every few million years, so we've gotten pretty good at fixing that kind of damage. This is actually a smaller scale than what we usually deal with." The casual way Captain Martinez discussed planetary reconstruction, as if it were routine maintenance work, was becoming a familiar pattern in Valterra's interactions with humans. They seemed to consider galaxy-level catastrophes to be minor inconveniences that could be solved with the right tools and sufficient determination. Word of the Devourer's death spread through the galaxy faster than most, faster than light communication systems. Within hours, every major civilization was receiving reports that the ancient cosmic threat had been eliminated by an unknown species from a Class 12. Deathworld, the Galactic Council, convened an emergency session within 2 days. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss what many were calling the most significant event in galactic history. The agenda had only one item: humanity. The debate was intense and divided. Some council members argued that any species capable of killing a devourer represented a threat to galactic stability that could not be ignored. Others pointed out that the humans had used their power to save an entire civilization and showed no signs of aggressive expansion. "The question before us," declared Council Speaker Zen Vak of the Altarian Empire, "is whether we are dealing with the galaxy's salvation or its next great threat." The discussion might have continued for weeks if Commander Valterra had not requested permission to address the Council. As the leader of the species that had been saved by human intervention, her words carried significant weight. "Honored representatives," she began, "I have spent the past week working closely with these humans. I have seen their methods, their technology, and their attitudes toward life and death. I believe I can offer insights that may help this council reach a wise decision." She paused and looked around the assembled representatives. "The humans are not like us. They come from a world so dangerous that it should not be able to support intelligent life. They have evolved not just to survive in hostile conditions, but to thrive in them. When faced with a problem that we considered impossible to solve, they saw it as an interesting challenge." "Are you saying they are dangerous?" asked the representative from the Centauri Federation. "I am saying they are different," Valterra replied. "When the Devourer came to our world, every civilization in the galaxy told us the same thing, that our situation was hopeless, that the creature could not be stopped, that we should accept our fate and try to save what little we could." She activated a holographic display showing before and after images of Kisira Prime. The humans looked at the same situation and decided that the creature was poorly designed and could be improved to death. They sent their people into conditions that should have been instantly fatal and treated it as routine work. They killed something that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years, and then they offered to help us rebuild what had been damaged. The council chamber was silent as representatives absorbed her words. The humans are not a threat to galactic peace, Valterra continued. They are the solution to threats that the rest of us consider unstoppable. But they will only help if they are asked, and they will only use their power to protect, not to conquer. After her speech, the council requested a direct meeting with Captain Morrison. The human arrived at the council chambers wearing his standard blue uniform and carrying himself with the same casual confidence that had impressed Valterra during the crisis. Captain Morrison, council speaker Zenvok said formally, "This council wishes to understand the intentions of your species. You have demonstrated capabilities that far exceed anything we have previously encountered. What do humans want from the galaxy?" Morrison looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of different species. "Honestly, we just want to help. Earth is a dangerous place, and growing up there taught us that when someone's in trouble, you step up and do something about it. We're not interested in conquering anyone or taking over anything. We just want to be good neighbors. And if another threat like the Devourer appears, then you call us, and we'll deal with it," Morrison said simply. "That's what neighbors do for each other." The formal vote took place the following day. By a margin of 39-8, the Galactic Council voted to offer humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Federation. The terms were unusual. Humans would be granted full membership privileges, but they would also be required to respond to distress calls from member worlds. Captain Morrison accepted the terms on behalf of humanity with a simple statement: "We'd have responded to distress calls anyway. Making it official just means we'll have better communication protocols." 3 months later, Commander Valterra was back on the bridge of her command station, which was now orbiting a fully restored Kisira Prime. The missing continents had been rebuilt, and the planet's ecosystem was recovering faster than anyone had expected. She was reviewing routine patrol reports when her communication officer announced an incoming priority message from the human fleet. "Commander," came Captain Morrison's familiar voice, "we just received a distress call from the Proxima sector. Looks like they're dealing with something called a reality storm. We're heading out to take a look. Thought you might want to know." Valterra smiled. A reality storm was another cosmic phenomenon that most species considered unstoppable, but she had learned not to underestimate human problem-solving capabilities. "Good luck, Captain," she replied. "Try not to break too many laws of physics." "No promises," Morrison said with obvious amusement, "but we'll see what we can do." As the human fleet departed for their next impossible mission, Valterra reflected on how much her understanding of the universe had changed. She had learned that impossible was often just another way of saying no one had tried the right approach yet. The galaxy was a dangerous place. It's filled with ancient threats and cosmic horrors that could destroy entire civilizations. But now, it was also home to a species that had evolved to see such threats as problems to be solved rather than disasters to be endured. Somewhere in the Proxima sector, a reality storm was about to learn what the Devourer had learned, that humans did not believe in impossible. And they were very good at proving themselves right. The communication system activated one final time with an incoming message. It was brief and routine, the kind of message that had become familiar throughout the galaxy. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant. We got your distress call. Help is on the way. And in a universe full of dangers that could not be stopped." Those simple words had become the most comforting phrase in any language.